Good evening. Call to order the meeting of the Washington County Board of Education tonight, January 16th. We do have a quorum. We have all members present this evening. I'd like to welcome Hayden McCarty, a 5th grade student at Hancock Elementary. Hayden will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Hayden, did you come down by dog sled this evening?
No.
No. Well, I thank you very much for coming here to lead us in the pledge and a moment of silence.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
How are things at Hancock Elementary these days?
Good.
They're good. And you're a 5th grade student.
Yes.
And what do you enjoy about your days at Hancock?
I like physical education and math.
Physical education and math. Is there something particular in physical education that you enjoy?
I like the games we play and running on the track.
Ah. Well, do you have anything that you would, well, first, before I ask if you have anything that you would like to ask us, do you have someone here that you would like to introduce to the audience and to the board?
Yes, my dad, Tom McCarty, my mom, Amy McCarty, and my principal, Mrs. Guest.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, for bringing Hayden down. So is there anything that you would like to ask any of us?
How often do you have these meetings?
How often do we have these meetings? Would someone like to respond to Hayden?
Twice a month, 2 business meetings, first and third Tuesdays generally.
Does this look like something you might enjoy doing?
Yes.
It does. Well, that's good to know. Public service is a great thing. You have an interest in education?
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I thank you again for coming down in these bad weather conditions, and good luck to you at Hancock Elementary. And when you go across the street to the middle school, which will be what, in September, August?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you again.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Mom, Dad.
I think he missed his opportunity to ask if he could have school off tomorrow.
Oh, I think he enjoys school too much to want to be off.
He's not like you, Peter.
I did have the opportunity to have Hayden's mom and dad when I was principal at Hancock Middle Senior High School. Had both of those fine people there as students, and I remember them fondly. So, Hayden, you have great parents. Yeah, thanks for coming.
Sweetheart. You're welcome to stay for the duration of the meeting, and if you don't choose to stay, you can certainly slip out at any time. So, okay? He's got homework, Peter says. Okay, our first item of business is the approval of tonight's agenda.
So move.
A second. Thank you. Is there any discussion of the agenda? All those in favor of tonight's agenda? Okay, it's unanimous, and the student member concurs. Next is the approval of the minutes.
Mrs. William, I move for the approval of the work session minutes dated Tuesday, January 2nd, 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Gessler. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Any additions, corrections to those minutes? Okay, all those in favor of accepting those minutes? Okay, it's unanimous. Those minutes are approved.
I move for the approval of the closed session minutes dated Tuesday, January the 2nd, 2018.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Any additions or corrections to that set of minutes? No? Seeing none? All those in favor of approving those minutes? Okay, it's unanimous. Those minutes are approved.
And finally, I move for the approval of the business meeting minutes dated Tuesday, January the 2nd, 2018.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Any additions or corrections to those minutes? All those in favor of approval of that set of minutes? Okay. It's unanimous with the student member concurring. This evening, for public comment, we have no one signed up. Is there anyone out there who's not had an opportunity to sign up? This is for public comment during the business session, or the business portion of the evening. We do have some individuals who are signed up for the budget hearing that will happen shortly. Anyone who wishes to speak now during the business meeting, this would be your opportunity. No? Okay. Then we'll move on to reports to the board. We have Mr. Hummel, who is chairman of the the Budget Advocacy and Review Committee. I always want to say advisory instead of advocacy. And Mr. Prue, who is our Chief Operating Officer. And they're here this evening to make a report on the work of that committee for this year. Gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening, Mrs. Williams, members of the board, Dr. Michael. Staff had an opportunity to meet with the Budget Advocacy and Review Committee after the board's adoption of your draft FY 2019 budget on January 2nd. The committee has formulated a recommendation for you. As staff member and staff liaison to the committee, I want to thank Mr. Hummel and his committee's work. Very diligent, very swift in reviewing the budget. They had done their homework prior to coming to the meeting and asked very active, engaged questions of the staff. We did our best, of course, to walk them through the details of your draft board, or of the board's draft FY19 budget, and to apprise them of where we are in terms of our ask moving forward at this point. And so with that, Mr. Hummel.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And again, I would like to take the opportunity to thank all the Budget Advocacy Committee members for their dedication in reviewing the budget. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank Jeff, Mr. Brandenburg, Dave Brandenburg, and also Ms. Kretzer for their assistance, because it is a very time-consuming process. I'd also like to acknowledge Sean Bryce, who is also a member of the committee that joined us here this evening. She's in our group here this evening. And I guess this is sort of the first one that I've worked on that we've kind of not known the dollar amount that we have available for the state. So it's kind of like I put our presentation and our review in a different format. During the committee's deliberation, we discussed in detail the revenues, the reductions, the baseline budget, and the planned expenditures. And at this point, since the state revenue is unknown, we believe that we can expect somewhere between $1 million to $3 million to address the $5 million that's needed to balance the draft budget. We also expect to receive the state numbers possibly Friday, and I believe you said, Mr. Michael, it could be even as late as Monday. And of course, the county is required to provide approximately $1.3 million as for maintenance of effort. And as a result of the provision of a law, we're known now as a low effort designation. The total request to the county commissioners above maintenance of effort will depend upon the amount of the state funding that's available. The couple of key points that I want to touch on: the total incremental funding needed for the 2018-2019 budget, of course, is $5 million. Enrollment, as you know, has remained basically flat, which has a negative impact on the state funding. A couple of things of note: that there's approximately 100 students, or a 23% increase over last year, are EL students. These are students that are not just in the lower grades, but also in the upper grades that speak very little, if any, English, and these will need special attention, almost one-on-one. Of course, that means an added expenditure. There are other numerous social and emotional family issues, each with their own unique challenges. Also, as you've noted, 1 in 3 children going to kindergarten are not fully prepared to learn. I know this has been critical for Dr. Michael. The staff and board are to be commended as they've stepped up to address this challenge with additional pre-K classroom teachers, some being new, some redeployed. Healthcare benefits for employees have only increased by approximately 5%. However, the cost of this increase in healthcare and also the proposed compensation increase is actually $1.1 million more than the requested revenue increase. Keep in mind that 86.7% of our overall budget is staff and related benefits. The balance of that, of course, includes maintenance, utilities, transportation, technology, staff development, and other supporting services that are essential. Something new this year is we have one of those unfunded state mandates that requires sick leave for substitute teachers and temporary employees. That will also be approximately a $250,000 expense that it's just mandated, it's not funded. On somewhat of a positive note, our free and reduced meals, the farm has decreased from 48.5 to 46.9. Although this demonstrates, that we are improving in our local economy, again, it's just like the thing with the enrollment. This is also going to have a negative impact on our level of state funding. A detailed revenue of that 2018-19 budget, resulted in operational, non-position related budget cuts totaling $2.2 million. And this clearly demonstrates the fiscal responsibility of the board. We also want to recognize that the county is facing increasing needs and dwindling resources in its own operating budget. At the same time, we are fully aware that the county has sizable fund balance as of result of several years of past surpluses. So in line with our discussion, our committee agrees that we must request that our county commissioners do not shift any additional costs to our school system. The system has already absorbed the cost of the school buses, crossing guards, the Judy centers, director's salary, and and at one time these were all provided to the Washington County Public Schools as non-recurring costs. And additionally, the county shifted approximately $3 million to the cost of school nurses several years ago when they defunded that program. We continue to believe that the Board of Education has always acted responsibly with the funds that have been entrusted to it in the past. And again, we want to commend them that the board has strived to maintain low average class size and provide individualized and differentiated instruction. The board has once again decreased costs by $2.2 million in non-instructional areas to funnel budget dollars directly into the classrooms. And we believe that the board has acted in the very best interest of every citizen in Washington County. At this point, since the amount of the funding of the state of Maryland is unknown, we recommend that the county commissioners continue their investment in education beyond maintenance of effort. For the future of our county, we need the commissioners to fully fund any budget deficiency that remains after applying the state's amount. And I'll entertain any questions, and if I don't have the answers, I know that Mr. Brooks can help me out there.
Thank you, Mr. Hummel. Colleagues, questions? No questions? No one has a question? Well, on behalf of the board, I would like to thank you and your committee for the work that you do. It's a very positive thing when we see you annually. You're a fixture, Mr. Hummel, and we appreciate your service on this very important committee. And we appreciate the time spent by the committee to look over our budget and to put forward its recommendations and its support. In particular, I thank you for recognizing the need that we have and the need to make the request of the county commissioners this year for something above maintenance of effort.
I truly believe that everyone here in this room has one thing in mind, and that is the future of Washington County, and the future lies within our students. So sadly, sometimes these things take money, and they need to step up now at this point, because this is probably going to be one of the tightest budget years that I've seen. So,
Well said. Thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to call a recess from our business meeting. And then we will convene our public hearing. And our public hearing will provide the opportunity for comment on the Board of Education's FY 2019 Draft General Fund Operating Budget. Heard the report of the BARC committee.
One of his years. I have friends who have young children who are in the special education system right now, and I am saddened to learn that they are facing the same exact challenges that my son faced. I really was hopeful that Washington County could improve with the budget in addressing many of the concerns that special education parents of children with special education children have, including concerns with enough staffing, with paraprofessionals, with more training, more resources available to them. It is quite a challenge, I'm sure, for parents to know what the system is and how to address all of you. I'm sure that they go to their schools and they have their concerns expressed to the paraprofessionals or to the teachers, and those are the people who are pretty powerless to do anything for the children. Really, it comes up to the level of administrators and to the board to help fund the needs of children with special needs. And I have several young friends, like I said, who are facing the same challenges that my husband and I faced with our son. My son had a lot of behavior issues, and so he had to have a paraprofessional with him throughout his entire time in Washington County schools. And I find that there are shortages of people in different schools, shortages in staffing. So I know that the CCAC, the Special Education Citizens Advisory Council is going to become more active because that is a venue for them, a way to have a voice, so that you all do know what the concerns are. And I do know I have spoken in the past to the commissioners on behalf of the board, so I do know that there will be parents there who will be also, fighting for you all to get the funding that you need for this budget. I personally have gotten special education certified. I've been in education for 25 years. I used to teach at a high school in Pennsylvania, and I'm in higher education now at HCC. So I know the value of education, and I did get certified in Maryland as a special education instructor. I also serve on the board at Star Community, so I know what the needs are of adults with special needs. So I really, as the previous speaker said, it is such a value to all of us in the whole community in the county to cherish what our children's education and what our children need to learn. And to have the resources that they need for special education is just invaluable. This is a silly request, but if you haven't seen the TV show Speechless on ABC, that is an excellent show. Minnie Driver is the mom who is the sometimes obnoxious mom who is fighting for what her child needs in education. And I would suggest that you watch that if you need to know how to relate to a parent with a child with special needs, because I feel like she's my kind of crazy sometimes. So write that down. Speechless is an excellent show. Watch it from the beginning. It streams on Hulu. And I think that's everything that I have for you tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your comments. Melissa Hahn. Do I have that correct? Hahn.
Good evening, board members. I'm also here to advocate as a mom of a special needs child. My daughter is 17 and attends Marshall Street School. I also have 2 other children in the system in the Williamsport School District. I just want to stress and advocate for fully funding the special education budget. Over my years through the school system, I have been able to fight for different programs for my child to be in, and I have been successful in that. And now that she has moved on to Marshall Street, those programs that I fought so hard for, I've sadly found out are gone. Just a few years ago, there was an autism program at Springfield Middle School, and I now understand that has gone by the wayside now. And that's very disappointing as a parent to have fought for something, not only for my child, but for other kids as well, whose parents aren't as able to get out and feel comfortable speaking or fighting for different programs for their children. So I'm trying to be a voice for those other students as well. My daughter's almost through the system, so obviously I have some experience with that. So I noticed in the budget here that there were only 2 more additional full-time staff being added this year. That is one of the major concerns that I have. My daughter as well has to have a paraprofessional with her at all times during her day. She has a lot of behavioral issues, and unfortunately, my child isn't one that's going to be able to attend college in the future or anything like that. I feel like a lot of time is spent on them taking tests and passing tests and all of these tests that are going to be of no help for her in the future. What's going to help her is a paraprofessional being with her throughout her day to guide her and help her learn how to function in society, learning other communication skills and functional skills. So I really would hope we would be able to, in the future, increase the amount of paraprofessionals that we have in our county, because I really feel like the teachers and the paras that work with our kids are the ones who are really going to be able to shape their future. As I said, those tests, that doesn't mean anything to my daughter. You know, I'm hoping and praying that throughout her final years here, possibly through the job development program at Marshall Street, that she'll be able to be employed. Those tests aren't going to help her. What's going to help her are caring and trained, properly trained staff members who can get her through her day with behavioral interventions and such. I'm happy that we have a behavioral specialist now in the county, and you know, I'm grateful for that. But you know, we just need to make sure in the budget, and I understand we're not fully funded by the county as well as a lot of the other counties in Maryland are, but you know, I would appreciate if we could, you know, really consider the needs of the special education students, and they are just ever increasing. Every year there are more and more, and unfortunately there are students who belong in the special education system who aren't getting services right now either. So that's also a concern. So in summary, I would just like to stress the fact that the special education program in the county is, I feel like it's not moving forward as it should. You know, it's possibly even going backwards with the loss of certain programs over the years, and I just, that's hurtful, and I would just hope that you would keep that in mind as we go forward with the budget for this year and in the future as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Holland.
Thank you, Mrs. Holland.
Isaac Aldridge.
Good evening. First of all, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Isaac Aldridge. I'm resident of Boonesboro, Maryland, with my wife, Angela, and our 3 kids. We are both 2001 graduates of Boonesboro High School, which means we did have the pleasure of graduating with Jacob Michael. I have a 5-month-old son who obviously has not entered the school system yet. I have a 6-year-old daughter who's in 1st grade at Boonesboro. She's very bright, creative, intelligent, doing very well. But I'm not here to talk about her because, frankly, you could underfund her programs and she will turn out just fine. I'm sure of that. I'm here to talk about my son, Mark, who is 4 years old, and he's currently in the Life Skills program at Funkstown. He has autism and a significant intellectual deficit, which is the result of a rare genetic mutation. You know, and I point that out, too, just to, not that we don't know this, but I think sometimes we forget. If you don't have a special needs child in your family, or you don't know one, it can happen. It can happen to anyone, a genetic mutation or something like that. Certainly, we never expected it to happen to us. But he's the sweetest, happiest little guy, and he's doing well. But everything is a lot more difficult for him. What might take a neurotypical child, 2 or 3 times to learn a basic skill has taken him hundreds of repetitions to learn the same skill. He needs daily intensive teaching, therapy, and instruction, as do a lot of other kids in this county. Which does bring me to a broader point, which is that I'm not just here to talk about my son, but I'm really here to represent all the special needs kids in this county. Those of us who are here tonight are here to represent, parents who are working tonight, parents who couldn't get child care. Obviously, child care is a lot harder to come by for special needs families also. So when my wife and I have been networking a lot with other special needs parents, teachers, and advocates in the county. In particular, when some people found out that I was going to speak tonight, a lot of people were kind of putting bugs in my ear. And, to be honest, I heard a lot of really, really negative things. And this is obviously not the venue to dive into a lot of those. But in particular, I kind of got the impression that Washington County has developed a bit of a reputation for being way behind in terms of taking care of our special needs kids. Obviously, again, my son's 4 years old. We're at the very beginning of this journey. We've got a long way to go. Our goal is to really form a partnership with the school system. We'd like to, really build the special needs programming back up. We recognize, of course, that funding is the biggest challenge, and clearly, the school system's underfunded across the board. We understand that. So we'll also, be advocating, at a state and local level as well to try to help get the funding coming your way so that we can make these improvements. But most of all, I just want to stress that the thing that we heard the most from other teachers and parents and advocates is really just, the staffing levels are low, and the training for the paraprofessionals. The teachers are pretty well trained, obviously, but the paraprofessionals are often not trained well. And so while they may be very well intentioned, they often don't know what to do to help the special needs kids in their classroom. So those are the two biggest concerns that we're hearing is staffing and training. At the end of the day, these kids, they deserve the best that we can give them. What a society does for, the people who are struggling, the kids who are challenged, and really anyone who's disenfranchised says a lot about a society. So, like I said, we'll also be taking our efforts to state and local politicians as well to try and increase funding efforts, because we know you can only do so much with what you have to work with. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aldridge. Mr. Neil Becker?
Thank you, President Williams and board members, Dr. Michael and staff. Thank you to the community members and parents who spoke today as well. It's powerful to hear their stories about their children and their desire to see a fully funded budget. And I really appreciate your efforts. The staff has done a tremendous job examining the budget, seeing how the budget could be modified so that we could do all that we can for our children. The budget funds programs, including pre-K, EL, special education, STEM, and the arts, and many more activities and programs that are out there for our students. I think the public hearing and talking to you as the governing board for the Board of Education, I think your job is already done. You've worked really hard to fund this budget, and we need to take our energies and transfer that to the county commissioners and the state funding agents. The return on investment is tremendous, especially when it's spent in birth to 5 programs, pre-K programs, paraprofessionals who work with our neediest students. When I say neediest, I say that in the best way possible, because some of our students require far more time and effort than we can imagine. The budget also supports many areas in the school system that people forget about and don't think that, the school system, PTs, OTs. When we think of a speech therapist, that can be a tremendous investment in the return on investment for a child's comfort when it comes to education and moving down the road, applying for jobs, and moving into the college realm, into the military. That confidence that one receives with the skills physically, mentally, socially to advance and move forward. If our county invests in education with the budget you've presented them, the return on investment will come back for decades. Literally, generations will benefit if the county commissioners fully fund your budget. I thank you for the opportunity to present and share my thoughts today. I thank you for your efforts to create a budget that is sound, that's physically conservative. There's not fluff and slush in this budget. Examine it. I invite all the critics of the school system to examine the budget. There is not fluff. Dr. Michael and the team and you as the board members have done a tremendous job. I will continue to advocate, and I look forward to advocating with you as a team for a fully funded budget as we present information to our funding agents here at the county commissioner level and at the state level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Becker, for your comments. Can you guys go names that I had of individuals who had signed up in advance. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like the opportunity to speak during our public hearing? Okay. Colleagues, have any comments that you would like to make? Dr. Michael, any comments that you would like to make before we adjourn public hearing?
Probably nothing significant. I know to our three speakers with special education, one of the shortfalls that I think we can address with almost no funding at all would be training, additional training for our instructional assistants. It's one of the areas, not only for special ed, but for other instructional assistants we have outside of the special ed area, that we try to focus some of our professional development time coming up this year and next year. We've talked about a great deal about our pre-K and kindergarten instructional assistants. You know, every time we have a teacher professional day, we have an opportunity to do additional training specific to pre-K or specific to kindergarten. We do some training with instructional assistants, but obviously we can do a great deal more. So that's one we can address with almost no funding at all. And certainly is something we can look into. The staffing issues and things like that are obviously ongoing budget challenges. We do work with our IDEA money. It's approximately $5 million. We match that beyond the $5 million match that's required by the federal government, and do what we can. I do believe we're meeting the needs of special education students or IEPs. We do have students, as I've referred, we go through the identification process. It's very important that we do that. I also think some of the programs we have, like the expansion of pre-K and our kindergarten program, will also help some of our special needs children as well. But obviously, there's a great deal more we can do for all of our students in Washington County. We'll continue to examine that and appreciate the speakers tonight, including Mr. Becker.
Thank you. Thank you to those who came out this evening to address the board. Appreciate your comments. And to anyone who is viewing this meeting either live or who will see the tape, if you have suggestions, comments, anything that you would like the board to know with regard to the FY 2019 General Fund operating budget, I would encourage you to reach out to a board member via email or phone call, or to Dr. Michael or to a staff member who would be happy, I'm sure, to get that information to the board. So with that, we'll adjourn the public hearing and reconvene the business meeting. Next on the business meeting agenda is old business, and we have none this evening. So we'll move on to new business. And the first item of new business is a consideration, a recommendation that's being brought forward to reclassify $265,500. Mr. Prue.
Good evening once again. So the last business meeting, you heard an update on the Reader's Workshop Professional Development Program. This evening, we're asking the board's permission to reclassify $265,500 from unrestricted fund balance to committed fund for the purposes of funding the purchase of classroom literature sets in support of the Reader's Workshop Professional Development Program. This is, I think, classroom instructional staff and supervisors will tell you that our classroom staff has asked for assistance in identifying specific texts that map directly to the curriculum that we're having success with in Reader's Workshop, and we're asking for your support at this time.
Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to reclassify $265,500 from unrestricted fund balance to a committed fund for the purposes of funding the purchase of classroom literature sets in support of the Reader's Workshop Professional Development Program.
Thank you, Mr. Victor. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Questions for Mr. Prue or any discussion? No? Then we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of the reclassification from the unrestricted fund balance to a committed fund? All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. 7 votes, and the student member concurs. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Prue. Next is the consideration of the consent agenda. Mr. Bakewell, good evening.
Good evening, President Williams, board members, Dr. Michael. Tonight I have five items for your review. The Purchasing Review Committee reviewed these items on December 20th and recommends approval, and staff is available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Colleagues, questions for Mr. Bakewell?
Madam President, I move to approve the awards, renewals, and procurements for unit price contract for earthworks to Advantage Landscape and Construction, Huntsberry Brothers, Jernigan's Environmental Services, Shades of Green Landscaping, Stevens Excavating, and Tri-State Fencing at the unit prices listed. Office supplies and services to Impact Office Products at the unit prices listed. 865 Apple iPads to Apple Inc. at a total cost of $254,335. Classroom literature sets for Read Aloud and shared reading to Scholastic at a total cost of $265,500. And 2013-04 software maintenance renewal for Student Information System to EduPoint Educational Systems at a total cost of $125,075.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Gaspard. Questions, discussion? Nothing? Okay,
I
then.
submitted my questions, they were all answered, so, previously.
Then we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of approving tonight's consent agenda? 7 affirmative votes. Student member concurs. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda under new business is an item for consideration, the Hagerstown Revitalization Project, Capital Projects Bond Bill, Subrecipient Agreement for FY 2018. Mr. Prue and Mr. Trotta, good evening.
Good evening. During the 2017 legislative session, 3 bond bills were passed to support the urban improvement project. One of the bond bills, which is in the amount of $1.5 million, designates the University of Maryland at Hagerstown, the Maryland Theater, and the Board of Education of Washington County as the recipients of those bond proceeds. The county commissioners are serving as the fiscal agent with regard to the $1.5 million in bond proceeds. The Maryland Department of Budget and Management requires all recipients of the bond proceeds to execute a sub-recipient agreement for fiscal year 2018. This particular document has been provided to the superintendent and to the members of the board so they could have an opportunity to review it. It has been approved for legal sufficiency, and at this time, you're requesting the Board of Education's approval of this agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trotta. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move for the approval of the Hagerstown Revitalization Project, Capital Projects Bond Bill, Subrecipient Agreement, fiscal year 2018.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stout. Questions for Mr. Trotta? Mr. Prue, or any discussion? Nothing? Okay. All those in favor of the motion to approve the Hagerstown Revitalization Project, Capital Projects Bond Bill Sub-Recipient Agreement for fiscal year 2018, all those in favor? Okay. 7 affirmative votes. Student
you.
member concurs. Thank you. And that brings us to the superintendent's report this evening.
Thank you, President Williams. Members of the board, tonight we have two presentations we'd like to share, and just have a comment after that. Our first presentation, Michelle Harmon, our Supervisor of Science and Math, and Chris Kopko, our STEM and Planetarium teacher, are here tonight to give us an update on the planetarium. As the board's aware, a couple years ago, we did a substantial facelift to the planetarium area, to the space capsule model that's there, but most importantly to the system that's inside the planetarium. And there's been a lot of work since then, and we're going to ask tonight just to take a few minutes and just share some of the updates since that time and some of the usage of the facility. So,
Good evening, President Williams, members of the Washington County Board of Education, Dr. Michael. We would first like to extend our gratitude to Washington County Public Schools, administration, and the board for their support of the William H. Brish Planetarium and the unique programs that this site provides for our students, teachers, and our community. Special thanks for the improvements and upgrades completed in October 2016, which have modernized and enhanced the offerings of the planetarium. These are some of the upgrades that were completed in October of 2016, a large portion of which involved the dome, planetarium, and the space itself, including training and digital presentations. Additional features of the upgrade included landscaping outside and aesthetics in terms of appearance of the building and the classroom, as well as hallway monitors and window images, and the refurbishing and restoring of the command module, which is outside the planetarium.
So the hardware that we went with was the Spitz Sidome. This is actually the company that provided our original system way back in 1969, I believe it was. And so that wasn't the reason we stuck with it. It actually had a lot of really great educational value for our students, as well as the aspect for public outreach as well. One of the things it had was the dome and classroom software is aligned. We have a classroom there too. So the software that we use in the dome is Starry Night software. There's Layered Earth software, which is kind of like Google Earth. And then there's Anatomy and Physiology software. That's all software that we use on MacBooks in the classroom. So the students, like we have high school kids who will come and they'll do things with different, finding different classifications of stars. And then they can take what they know and show it in the planetarium. So it's really interactive. We have different things with earthquakes for elementary students. So that's a great piece. Another thing that we had, we've developed a whole bunch of lessons, STEM lessons that we do in the classroom that work with what we do in the planetarium. We got over 20 planetarium programs that are kind of like, I'd say like IMAX type of things, only instead of just happening in front of you, it happens all around you, above you, beside you. So actually some of the ones we got are some of the kind of top of the line ones you'd have to go to like DC or Baltimore to see. But members of our community can come here to see those. They're done by people like Liam Neeson, things like that. So it's a really good resource to have, and they fit well with a lot of the lessons we do in the planetarium. And then we have many lessons that came from Spitz that saved a lot of computer programming time that we could utilize to show different things, like when we have an eclipse coming up, that's something that's already programmed in there, so we can show that pretty easily. And then the system that we have, I don't know how many of you have been to the old planetarium where we had the big projector in the middle and like 50 other projectors around the room. Now we've got 2 projectors and 2 computers, and that takes the place of everything that we had. In the Sidome, we've developed STEM multidisciplinary lessons using the software that we talked about. Those are good for showing teachers that come to, just the other half of my job is actually as a STEM resource teacher. So it's a good way to show teachers a way to develop quality STEM lessons and use with their kids. We have Earth's 3D topography and layers, which is kind of neat. You can actually take tours of, say, the Grand Canyon. You can fly through the Grand Canyon and see how that was formed. And there's a lot of other features like that too. And the SciTouch actually allows students to manipulate the dome. So they can take the dome and they can switch it to somewhere else and they can give information on what they did. It also allows me to present from anywhere in the dome, so it doesn't tie me to the computer in the back, and you can interact with your audience a lot easier that way.
Mr. Kopko maintains a Weebly site, which is accessible through our WCPS website. And on that site, it's constantly updated with the programs that we have throughout the year. There are 2 programs, 2 times a month, 2 programs back to back. A children's program followed by a general audience program, some of which have sold out because they're so popular. And Mr. Kopko tells me that Season of Light and Sesame Street, One World, One Sky are the most popular this year. And the evening programs run September, October through June this year, with the extension of the school year and the late start. In the summertime, we've explored offering summer programs, and we'll be doing that again with over 30 shows all summer. And those begin in June and July and August with like full-day programs of back-to-back. That's what we have done in the past. In 2017, there were 79 guests in June, 87 in the first showing in July, 153 in the second day in July, and then 205 in August. So as the summer progressed, it became increasingly popular, and I think if we continue and promote, that we'll see increased interest from the community. And the pricing is matinee for the day and regular pricing for the evening.
Another great thing about your support, what it's allowed us to do is really improve our outreach. We have a lot of public programs, as Michelle talked about. Special groups come. We have homeschool groups. There are actually, we've had groups come from outside at other school systems that even have planetariums that have decided to come to us. So that upgrade is really, I think the word has really gotten out, and it's really allowed other people to access it. It allows us to do a lot of professional development, so we've collaborated with the Maryland Science Center with a grant from NASA for a Live from the Sun workshop that we use with teachers. So we've given them resources and ideas for teaching about the sun in their classrooms. We have a STEM Connectors group, which is charged with taking STEM into every classroom in their schools. It's 1 to 2 connectors per school in the school system, and we lead that group there at the planetarium. And then obviously we have the schools come to the planetarium. We have a Star Lab, which can go out to the planetarium. And then we have sun spotters, which allow students to view the sun safely and see things about the Earth's rotation and the sun's rotation and sunspots and things like that. So some of the partners that we've had, the Maryland Science Center, obviously, the Tri-State Astronomers are a great partner. We hold the meetings there once a month, but they also support a lot of our schools, a lot of the evening programs that are out there, STEM programs in the evening, science. They're there a lot of times with telescopes, resources, free resources for parents and students. There's a podcast and an article that I do for the Record Herald that just gives an update on the sky, that actually that new system is great for really bringing that to life. And we support a lot of projects from the planetarium too, EV3 robotics kits, and supporting teachers in the classroom and helping them to make those connections to their curriculum with the tools that they have. And this is a slide on the planetarium attendance. You can see last year, the light blue, 2016, 2017 was the first year with our new system, and you can see the school day attendance jumped up a good bit, as did the public show attendance. That actually over doubled. If you look at this year's, the numbers for this year actually through December 31st, we have more students scheduled for the planetarium this year than what we had last year, so that number should rise, barring any types of cancellations. And then the public show attendance, that actually, if you project that out based on the numbers we've had so far, that number should be higher than last year as well.
And this graphic shows funds that were brought in from ticket sales, and each year does include the summer programs. And if you project out, again, that 2017-18 is as of December 31st, but we are on track to meet our targets and perhaps exceed what we had last year in ticket sales. Improvements have increased usage of the facility for programs year-round. And this year, with the school year change, as I said, we'll have increased summertime viewings that will extend throughout the summer. And some of the things that Mr. Kopko and I have discussed are determining ways to expand the STAR Lab program, which is the portable STAR Lab that can go from school to school, connecting that to the planetarium more cohesively. Also, extending more into the classrooms to coordinate and complement classroom instruction. And we would like to increase our partnership participation with our existing partners and also look at some other possibilities for creating collaboration opportunities. And Mr. Kopko and I will be looking at scheduling procedures to look at maximizing the opportunities that we have for our programs, for all students, for the community, and for teachers and professional development. And we're examining the idea of looking at the planetarium as a science center for activities beyond the planetarium in the classroom. And I would like to thank you for allowing us to provide this brief overview of the William H. Brish Planetarium. This unique experience and facility are both made possible for our students and community through your generosity and support. And for that, we are certainly grateful.
Thank you. Questions, colleagues?
I have a question. What is the cost for general public to come in and visit?
So for the evening shows, which is mostly what we do, it's $3 for adults, $2 for students. Washington County Public School employees are free. Washington County Gold Cards are free. And then during the day, it's $2 for adults, $1.50 for students.
And where do you have a certain website that, for a lot of people that are watching, you want to draw some people, now's the time to give your website address where they can go get tickets or where your program is. So you got something, is that a handout that you?
Absolutely. These are actually, they are the brochures for the upcoming planetarium programs. It has all the information in it. We also have our website, which is wbplanetarium.weebly.com. And that has all the information on upcoming programs, how to schedule, things like that as well.
Great.
And again, you can connect directly through the WCPS website easily with one click.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm curious about the data on planetarium attendance, looking at 2016, 2017, public show attendance, 1,455. What was going on then? Something must have been something fabulous.
It was honestly, it was the upgraded system. We had been running on a system that was from 1969. It was a lot of slides and things like that. And it was a nice star field, but it was definitely time for an upgrade. It had been updated, I should say, in the 80s. I believe it was 89, or maybe a little bit later than that. At any rate, once we upgraded that system, it was just completely, by word of mouth, it spread so fast. I had a lot of people who came in and said, this person was here last week and they told me all about it and I had to bring my kids, and I think that was the biggest draw.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board members haven't attended a show or would like to see a show, we'd certainly like to invite you to attend. It's a completely new experience over the old planetarium.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Michelle.
Dr.
Chris?
Michael.
Thank you
Leave
both.
these in the back.
Yes, thank you.
I invite David Brandenburg, Executive Director of Finance, Gina Keller, our Supervisor of Employee Benefits. We promised the board we would keep you up to date with healthcare. Healthcare is obviously a huge expenditure of the Board of Education. We are maintaining and keep it solvent. We've just closed our second quarter for this year. So far, things are going well with the unfortunate increase that we had to have last year for employees and for the Board of Education, a little over $8 million. But we're off to a good start so far in our healthcare fund, and David and Gina are going to bring us up to speed on that. And we've also had some ideas from our healthcare consultants. These were things that have to be negotiated and discussed in the future, but I just asked David and Gina just to share a little bit about some ideas we could start thinking about for the future. Good evening, President Williams, board members, and Dr. Michael. We do want to bring this quarterly update to you at this time. Each time we do this, we try to present a little bit of information that's a little bit different in addition to strictly the financial numbers. This time we thought we would take a look at the enrollment trends, something that's interesting to point out that over the last year, when you see there compared to October 2016 to October 2017, our total enrollment in the plan has not really changed. It's just increased by 1, but we have decreased the number of family enrollees and increased the number of employee-only or employee and children enrollees, no change in the employee and spouse tier. I think that's interesting because that can greatly affect what the board has to pay for the employee health care. As you can see there, a difference of from $9,000 to $23,701 is a $14,000 per employee possible difference there, depending on how it's enrolled. I think it's interesting to note also that the board pays, this is only the employer's share. This is only the board's share of the cost. That employees also contribute to the plan, and the board matches the same percentage depending on how the employee enrolls, whether the standard plan, the premium plan, or the limited plan. The percentage that the board pays of that total cost is the same regardless of how the employee enrolls, whether single or family coverage or something in between. So I think it's a pretty generous benefit. On the next slide, our actual figures that we have look at this through the second quarter of this fiscal year compared to the same time last year. You can see that even our administrative expenses are lower this year than they were last year. That's because of the transitional reinsurance fee that we had to pay last year as part of the Affordable Care Act. That was the last year that provision sunsetted, so we are benefiting a little bit in our administrative costs because of that. Also, you can see that our claims are actually a little bit lower for the first half of the year this year than they were last year, which is very encouraging news. You can see on the right there, the blue boxes, that the second half of the year tends to be an increase, that our claims seem to be higher in the spring than they are in the fall. And some of that's just naturally inflation creep. I'm not sure what the rest of it is. You can see there was a big difference there in FY16, a 26% increase over the first half of the year. But in 17, it was almost flat at a 0.4% increase. But for the whole year, those years, it was a 14% increase in 16 over the FY15 and a 4% increase from 17 compared to 16. And also those years, we ended up losing $6.1 million and $4.9 million respectively. But you can see there to the left, the profit this year is $2.8 million to date. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that, but we wanted to update you on the financial status. The next slide shows kind of a summary there. We started off this year, as you know, with a fund balance in the deficit situation of $4.1 million. So far, for the first 6 months of the year, we have netted $2.8 million, which is better than what we estimated we would be doing, but there's still half the year to go, and we don't know what that's going to hold. But originally we thought we might net just a little over $3 million for the whole year, so we are doing very well so far this year. Ending fund balance still in the red at $1.3 million, so we still have some progress to make. We didn't expect to pull out of it in 1 year, but it shows that we need to continue to have a surplus for more than 1 year to go back to our target fund balance of $3 million. There's also, we want to present tonight some proposed changes that our medical carrier, Cigna, had brought to us. We've talked about the 25% increase that we had in medical and pharmacy this year, our rates, and we wanted to try to get some ideas for what we can do to try to control those costs in the future. So, of course, the focus is on medical and pharmacy, which represent 96% of all of our claims, vision and dental being very small. So that's where the dollars are. We want to promote a healthier lifestyle and wellness that benefits our employees, it benefits us, and it benefits our students. If teachers are in the classroom because they're not sick, and bus drivers are on the buses, and we don't have to get substitutes and so forth, it benefits everyone to have well and healthy employees rather than sick and absent ones. Also, these proposed changes for consideration would provide greater oversight and target areas that are subject to being influenced. We try to look at what can we do to influence behavior or to influence the type of claims that we're having. So Mrs. Keller will review these proposed changes in more detail.
So to elaborate a little bit on Mr. Brandenburg's statement, we do ask our insurance company every year, where do you see room for change or room for improvement in the plan? We see our plan, we might see some other school systems' plans and their plan design, but they see the whole gamut. They see, private sector, public sector. So we ask, what do you see with our plan that we might have a little room to either save some dollars or make some changes that could potentially provide some impact, but maybe not have an impact maybe internally, but not have a huge impact on employees. So some of the first slides that we're going to look at are dealing with our pharmacy, and then we'll move to the medical piece. This first slide, and I'm not going to try to sit and go through slide by slide, but I understand that there are some terminology here that you're probably not overly familiar with or don't use day in, day out, so I do want to make sure you have an understanding of what these are. Under the clinical management piece, there is an opportunity under our plan to provide some increased oversight to combat the opioid epidemic in our area and what our nation is facing. The first bullet point there for the quantity limits, that seeks to limit the quantity of opioids, and basically that's done by either limiting what employees or members can get by if they're provided something that's a real high dosage, cough agents with codeine, or if they have a quantity that would be limited for short-acting opioids if there has been no authorized fill in the last 90 days. So as an example, I go to the dentist and I have my wisdom teeth out. If the dentist hands me a prescription for a 30-day supply of hydrocodone, I'm going to take that to the pharmacy and they're going to say, unfortunately, we're not giving you a 30-day supply, we'll give you a 7-day supply. If you need something past that, then your physician or dentist can recommend that. And I think that's a strong statement, not only for just financially, but I think just a responsibility that I think most employers and businesses are trying to take. The next bullet point looks at consideration of dose consolidation. And dose consolidation encourages doctors to try to prescribe, as an example, once a daily tab instead of two lower strength tablets if the per cost tablet is identical. So this isn't ideal for all medications or all conditions, but where it could be appropriate, they would make that recommendation. The reasoning behind that's pretty simple. I'll use another example. If you have a medical diagnosis where you're taking 3 pills 3 times a day, the insurance company may reach out to a physician and say, can they take a higher dosage 2 times a day? Would that be appropriate? Would that be okay? If each pill costs $2, and I take 9 a day, that's $18. Whereas if I was able to cut down the dosage to less than that and then be $12 a day, savings of $180 per month just on one medication. So I think the assumption is also there that people would adhere to the medications better if they only had to worry about taking it twice instead of, or taking less times per day. So that's the reasoning behind the dose consolidation recommendation. The next bullet point is prior authorization. And this prior authorization would focus on high-cost, non-specialty medicines and opioids again. If someone tried to fill a prescription for a long-acting opioid, which is continuous use, and they had no previous request on file, their physician would need to provide an authorization of why they needed that. The same scenario is used for any high-cost, non-specialty drug, except with a situation the physician may have to show that their patient has tried other alternatives first with that. Note here that there are members with certain illnesses, cancer, HIV, end-stage renal disease, that would not have to be subject to these prior authorizations. They would push right through. The the next slide deals with specialty drugs. What Cigna is recommending is that we steer specialty drugs covered under our pharmacy benefit to their home delivery program. Specialty drugs are biologics, and those are drugs that are derived from living cells, and they're most likely injected or infused. They're normally very high cost. The drug cost for specialty meds across the U.S. is expected to increase by 361% from 2012 to 2020. We are seeing that under our plan. Under our plan, specialty meds were over 30% of our total pharmacy spend. And that cost was only driven by 4.8% of our members. So we have low usage, but it's at very high cost. So one of the things they recommended is to try to drive all the specialty medications through their exclusive home delivery program. And they're hoping by doing that, they have an outreach to the member to make sure that they're adhering to those medications, to make sure that if they're prescribed them, that if they have any questions about them, that they're just not immediately stopping. They see time and time again where somebody will be prescribed something, they'll stop taking it within 2 days because it's not working for them. Instead of talking to their physician or finding out, can I take something else, or am I taking this wrong, they just stop taking it. So, if we filled a 90-day supply of a specialty medicine, that's very high cost to just not know how to adhere to that. We right now have about 91% of our specialty costs are being filled through this manner anyway, so we wouldn't have a large transition of members to this. A different path we could take with our specialty drugs is limiting those to 30-day supply instead of being able to receive a 90-day supply. That way, if there would be fills that were, that people couldn't take, we wouldn't be, essentially wasting 2 months' worth of medications. On the next slide, it's called multi-source brand drugs. And basically what that is, multi-source brand drugs have generic equivalents available. The generic equivalent is sold under the generic name, but its active ingredients are identical to the drug that's sold under the trademark. With this change, members that are receiving a brand name drug when a generic is available would either need to switch to the generic, or their physician would have to state to the pharmacy that the brand name was necessary instead of the generic. Dispense is written. I don't know if anybody's heard that terminology or not. If neither of those steps are taken, the member would be charged the generic copay plus the difference in cost between the generic drug and the brand name drug. The estimated savings from this change is approximately $35,000. Right now, it impacts about 42 members that are receiving 162 prescriptions. There's some trepidation with that savings amount because it is possible that the members would just simply go to their physicians and say, I need this drug as a brand name. And that's okay if that's truly what the employee needs. However, if we have members that are able to take the generic, I think we would encourage them to take that route, because every time we can increase the use of a generic, it immediately reduces our claims costs to the tune that every 1% increase in generic utilization can decrease costs by $364,000. So there's some substantial savings that could be rendered from that. Another change we could make under the pharmacy plan would be specifically looking at our 90-day supply of drugs. One of the things that Cigna recommended is a network that they have that is a smaller network that we would receive our 90-day drugs from. Right now, we can receive a 30-day supply or a 90-day supply at a participating retail pharmacy, and we just pay the co-payments for that. We can also utilize a mail order program in which we can get a 90-day supply but only pay 2 co-payments. So we have those options available. Under this proposed change, members could still attain the 30-day supply, no problem. The 90-day supply, they would have to go to a more restricted or limited network. And those networks are usually larger pharmacies, Walmart, CVS, Target, Sam's, places like that. Right now, about 60% of our members are already using one of these targeted pharmacies. I want to stress it doesn't change the benefit to the member. They can still get a 30-day supply. They can still get a 90-day supply. They would just not be able to get the 90-day supply maybe at the pharmacy that they choose to. They could also still use the mail order program and still save themselves some money as well. Changing from the medical plan, or the prescription plan to the medical plan, one of our focuses over the past year has been on the increased usage of urgent care and the continued high cost of using the emergency room. You can see under our current copayment structure that other than the higher emergency room copayment, there's really no incentive for members to try the lowest cost alternative first. So we're recommending changing to the following. Implementing a $0 telehealth copay, and for those that are not familiar, telehealth, it's kind of like a new wave of healthcare. It's a phone call or a video conference with a physician that can treat minor illnesses over the phone or video. Keeps members from having to potentially go to urgent care or the emergency room. It's available 24/7, so it's been a nice addition to our plan. We would also keep the physician copay at $20, increase the urgent care copay to $40, and increase the emergency room copay to $75. This isn't meant to penalize those that truly need to use the emergency room, but in reality, emergency room visits are more costly. The average cost is about $1,300 per visit. So the increased copayment for urgent care, too, is to hopefully steer people to their physician or to telehealth if possible. Of course, we recognize that sometimes urgent care is needed, but with no increased copayment, there's really no incentive for them to try to seek the lower cost alternative first. With the telehealth, we feel that moving to the $0 copay, that employees might try to use that service first. We've gotten some really good feedback from employees about that service. The only negative that we usually get would be, hey, I called, I tried to use it, and they said that the condition that I had, I needed to go to a doctor anyway, so I ended up paying a $20 copay to them, and I have to pay a $20 copay to the doctor. So removing that copay on the telehealth, it's a very low-cost benefit to us, to the board, and I think it would really increase utilization and hopefully keep people out of the urgent care if they don't need to be. We didn't note any cost savings on this slide because it might end up being a wash if people do really flood to the telehealth. The increased co-payments might just take care of that payment. All right. The out-of-pocket maximum. Now this gets a little tricky. The out-of-pocket maximum, I'm going to try to explain this very well. It's the maximum amount a member can pay out of pocket in deductibles, co-payments, and co-insurance in one plan year. Once the out-of-pocket maximum is reached, the plan, meaning WCPS Health Insurance Fund, begins to pick up at 100% for the remainder of the plan year. For many years, WCPS had an out-of-pocket maximum on the medical plan, but there was no limit on prescription drug expenses. This means that employees could have limitless out-of-pocket expenses for their prescription drugs and will never meet any type of maximum. A few years ago, the Affordable Care Act put into place various regulations regarding the out-of-pocket maximum. One was obligating plans to include the deductible and co-payments under the maximum, and a later regulation required plans to have an out-of-pocket maximum on prescription drugs. And since WCPS didn't have one, our prescription drug co-payments got rolled under the medical out-of-pocket maximum. With that change, it means members are now reaching their maximums simply by paying their co-payments. And that's really not the intention of having an out-of-pocket maximum on your plan. The intention is to keep employees from having substantially large amounts, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars out of pocket without some type of maximum. It's really not meant to only be in place for people that are paying just co-payments and a small deductible. So what is being introduced is a plan to establish a separate out-of-pocket limit for prescription drugs and to leave the medical out-of-pocket at its current level. The maximums shown on the slide are for an individual. For a family, they would be double the individual. And these proposed maximums are still less than the limits set forth under the Affordable Care Act plans. One of the final changes we're bringing to you is medical management. Cigna offers a program called Health Matters Care Management. And this program comes as part of a standard package for any of their fully insured clients. So a lot of people in this area that already have a Cigna product already have this included in their benefit structure. Self-insured employers can elect to have it. There's multiple points to this program, but one of the important pieces puts a pre-certification process in effect for all high-tech radiology, such as MRIs, CT scans, and PET scans. With this pre-cert, a physician would have to seek approval for these services to be completed prior to a lesser cost alternative, such as an X-ray. We saw an increase in utilization of MRIs and CT scans last year over the previous plan year, which is why they thought this might be something for us to consider. Pre-certification would also be required on certain outpatient services, such as surgical procedures. Again, this means that the physician would have to seek approval for these services prior to them being performed. This management program also intensifies the coordination of care when someone is hospitalized. They would receive support from a transition specialist to facilitate a timely discharge and to make sure programs are in place for the patient once they're home. And then along with those components, this program also offers expanded coaching opportunities and provides additional communication between case managers and physician if an employee is assigned a case manager for a chronic condition that they may have. There are savings that can be realized from this management program, potentially large savings, but we're still working with Cigna to gain a better understanding of the overall program and to explore and make sure that we understand all the facets before we look at total dollars saved. Not mentioned on any of these slides is the targeted communication campaigns that we will be starting. Cigna already outreaches to members now via email or text message with tidbits of information. But it's also been suggested that we do campaigns specifically around making sure employees have primary care physicians, pre-diabetes awareness and treatment, and we also need to encourage engagement in Cigna's wellness coaching, their case management and chronic condition coaching. It's free to all of us. One of our goals is to ensure employees are aware of these programs and know how and where to use them.
And I think that's about it. We think that conservatively, if you implemented all of these proposed changes, it would result in easily $1 million probably. We said 500,000 to $1 million. I think it's could possibly be well over $1 million in savings possibly. But for next steps, we do need to continue to discuss these changes and any other ideas with the Healthcare Committee and begin a dialogue with our employee groups. So we just wanted to present this information as to the board as some possible changes and kind of an update on where we are, and let you know that we are looking at ways just to enhance the plan or to provide a more affordable plan in the future. Just wanted to provide the update on where we are with the healthcare balance. We're pleased that it's coming up out of the red. We're still obviously more than $1 million in the red. Our goal is to be at least $3 million in the black in the healthcare balance. So we'll continue to work on that and continue to report on that. In 3 months, the group will come back again and make the report. Also, I wanted the board just to be aware of some of the conversation they're having in the healthcare committee. These are obviously items that are a long way from being considered, and we'll have lots of time to discuss those in the coming year. If there's any interest on the board's part to pursue those with our bargaining units. So thank you, David and Regina, for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Last thing I just wanted to mention, the Weebly People team from Boonesboro High School won state competition again this year. They go on to national competition in April, and we wish them the very best of luck. And I'm sure we'll be honoring them in the coming board meetings in the near future. So with that ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. Does anyone have any questions on the presentation on the healthcare benefits? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Michael, for your report. Next item on the agenda is personnel action. Good evening, Dr. Pugh.
Good evening, President Williams, members of the board. I'm here today to ask for your approval of the personnel actions discussed earlier in today's closed session.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Any questions for Dr. Pugh? The motion is to approve personnel action that was discussed earlier today in closed session. All those in favor? Okay, 7-0. Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Pugh.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to reports to the board and board member committee reports. Would you like to start down there, Mr. Diallo?
Week on January 9th, the Washington County Association of Student Councils had our third meeting of the year. We currently opened up nominations for a SMOB for the 2018-2019 school year, and elections will be in March. I'd love for any of my fellow board members to attend if possible, and I'll provide the meeting date as soon as I get it.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Murray?
Tomorrow, I will be attending the monthly meeting of the Washington County Public Schools Education Foundation. It'll be here at 9 a.m. And also, the Curriculum and Instruction Committee will be meeting on Tuesday, January 23rd at 10:30 a.m. in the board conference room. Finance Committee met prior to today's closed session and had a very busy agenda. We discussed the December financial report. We got an extensive report on all the grants that the school system applies for and depends on. And we also got an update on our retirement plans. And we will be meeting again in February, on February 27th, again at 2 o'clock.
Thank you. Mr. Gessert, facilities?
Yes, we met back in earlier in the month, and our next meeting is coming up is February the 6th, but just a little quick review. It won't take much time. We did review the downtown project, the fifth floor project pricing that's coming along with the architectural services of the fifth floor. A meeting was held for the Sharpsburg Elementary with the staff where they presented some design work down there. And also, we've talked a little bit about the Milestone Communication Project at North High.
Thank you. Mrs. Fisher, policy?
Policy has not met since our last business meeting. However, we're planning to meet on Tuesday, the 23rd at 9:15.
Human Resources?
Yes, the HR committee will meet next Tuesday, the 23rd at 9:15 in the Washington Room on the third floor of this building.
Okay. Next, under miscellaneous business, we have future agenda items. You have a list of those. They include upcoming legislative briefings, one on one on February 6th, one on March 6th, an update on the Claude Kitchens Outdoor School on March 20th, the enrollment forecast for 2018 through 2027. That's some year, isn't it? That's just, wow. Sobering, yes, that's coming up in April. Another quarterly healthcare update is scheduled for April. An update from the BARC is scheduled for this spring. And then July and October, more quarterly healthcare updates. So if there are no objections, those are future agenda items. And if you have anything that you'd like to see placed on an agenda in the future, please let me know, or Mr. Stauffer, or Dr. Michael, and we will work to get that on the agenda of an upcoming meeting. So we'll move to board member comments. Mr. Reiner, would you like to begin?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Fisher?
I have nothing this evening.
Okay,
I don't have anything.
nothing? Mr. Stauffer? Mr. Bickford?
Nothing.
Mrs. Murray?
I just want to say that I was happy to see our 3 special ed students' parents here advocating for them. I spent many, many years as a paraprofessional in special education. I understand their needs.
It was a labor of love for me. I loved every minute of it, and those students are wonderful, and anything we can give them is well worth it.
Mr. Diallo? Nothing? Okay. I have a statement that I would like to read this evening. Maryland law now requires at least one individual who is an employee, officer, or member of a public body to receive training on the requirements of the Maryland's Open Meetings Law. And back in December, on the 8th of December, 6 of our members, Mrs. Fisher, Mr. Gesford, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Stauffer, and myself, participated in a certified Maryland Open Meetings Act training session provided by the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. And on another date, within the required time frame, a 7th board member, Mr. Ridenour, participated in an online training session offered by the Office of the Attorney General and the University of Maryland Institute for Governmental Service and Research. So I'm very pleased to say that the Washington County Board of Education has gone beyond the minimum requirement of Maryland law, and that all 7 members have received the Open Meetings Act training required.
Mm-hmm.
Did you mention Peter?
I did.
Oh.
I do believe I mentioned Peter. Did I skip
hear
you?
It's good.
You know what? I did not mention Mr. Bickford. I apologize for the omission.
He was giving you the evil eye.
He
That's why I
was.
said something.
My deepest apologies. Again, there's
All the credit for school we
six
did.
members. Jacqueline Fisher, Michael Gesford, Linda Murray, Stan Stauffer, Melissa Williams, and Peter Bickford.
Thank you.
Thank you. So again, all 7 of us have met that requirement. I think that's something unusual for a Board of Education in the state. So thank you, colleagues. Is there anything else? Anything else I can be corrected on, Mr. Bickford? And I do apologize again. Okay. We'll adjourn. Thank you.